The girl standing alone on the biggest stage in America owned nothing but her voice and a faith strong enough to shake the world. Judges smiled politely, the audience whispered with doubt, and Simon Cowell leaned back, expecting another forgettable audition. But when a poor Filipino girl began singing the names of the 25 prophets with a voice that felt like a prayer, the entire theater fell silent, and something inside Simon Cowell broke. If you believe music can change hearts and stories like this deserve to be heard, subscribe now, because this is not just a performance, it is a miracle. In a small coastal village in the Philippines, where wooden houses balanced on fragile stilts and electricity came and went like an unreliable guest, lived a girl named Amara. She was 13 years old, thin from years of simple meals, her feet hardened by walking barefoot on dirt roads, and her clothes often stitched together by her mother's tired hands. Amara did not grow up dreaming of fame or bright lights. Her world was made of early mornings, the smell of salt from the sea, and evenings spent listening to her grandmother's voice telling stories under a flickering lamp. Amara's father had been a fisherman, but one stormy night the sea took him and never gave him back. From that day, her mother worked endlessly, cleaning houses, washing clothes, doing anything she could to keep food on the table. Music was not a luxury they could afford. There was no piano, no guitar, no vocal coach. But Amara had something rare. She had a voice shaped by sorrow, faith, and silence. Every morning before school, Amara helped her mother prepare dried fish to sell at the market. She sang softly while working, not for anyone else, but because singing made the heaviness in her chest feel lighter. Her grandmother noticed first. The old woman would pause, close her eyes, and whisper that Amara's voice sounded like a prayer traveling upward. The song that changed everything came from her grandmother as well. One evening, during a power outage, her grandmother began reciting the names of the prophets, telling Amara how each one carried a message, endured hardship, and trusted God even when the world turned away. Amara listened carefully, absorbing every word. That night, unable to sleep, she began humming the names softly, weaving them into a melody that felt natural, as if it had always existed. Over time, the melody grew. It was simple, slow, and deeply emotional. Amara sang it while walking to school, while waiting in long lines for water, and while sitting by the shore where her father once stood. The names of the prophets became her comfort, her strength, and her way of making sense of pain. One day, a volunteer teacher visiting from Manila heard Amara sing during a school event. The room went quiet. The teacher felt chills and asked Amara where she learned to sing like that. When Amara explained, the teacher looked at her with disbelief and hope. A few weeks later, the teacher returned with news that would change Amara's life forever. She had been nominated to audition for an international talent show in America. At first, Amara thought it was a joke. America felt as distant as the stars. Her mother cried, not from joy, but from fear. They had no money, no passports, no idea how such a dream could be real. But with help from the community, donations from neighbors who believed in her voice, and paperwork that felt endless, Amara found herself boarding a plane for the first time in her life. The journey was overwhelming. The noise, the size of everything, the language, all made her feel small. When she arrived at the audition venue, she saw hundreds of talented singers with polished clothes and confident smiles. Amara stood quietly in the corner, holding a small cloth bag containing her grandmother's scarf, her only comfort. Backstage, producers asked her questions. Why did you choose this song? What does it mean to you? Amara answered honestly. She said the song was about faith, about remembering those who carried God's message, and about finding light in darkness. Some producers exchanged uncertain glances. A song about prophets was unusual. Risky. Not what they expected for American television. When her name was called, Amara walked onto the stage slowly. The lights blinded her. The crowd looked endless. Simon Cowell glanced at her briefly, reading her story from the card in his hand. A poor Filipino girl. A religious song. His expression was neutral, guarded. He had heard thousands of singers. He had been disappointed too many times to expect anything special. The audience murmured softly. Some smiled kindly. Others looked skeptical. Amara took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and began. The first notes were barely above a whisper. The theater grew quiet. Her voice was clear but fragile, like glass about to break. Then she sang the first name. Adam. The sound carried weight. Something ancient. Something pure. As she continued, her voice grew stronger. Each name flowed into the next, not rushed, not forced, but filled with emotion. Na, Ibrahim, Musa, Isa. The melody rose and fell like waves, washing over the audience. People stopped breathing. The judges leaned forward. Simon Cowell's hand froze mid-movement. He stared at Amara, his eyes no longer critical, but searching. Midway through the song, Amara's voice cracked slightly. Tears filled her eyes, but she did not stop. She thought of her father, her grandmother, her mother washing clothes late at night. She thought of every prayer whispered in the dark. Her voice grew raw, powerful, and unfiltered. The audience began to cry. Some pressed their hands to their mouths. Others wiped their eyes openly. The song was not just heard. It was felt. As Amara reached the final names, her voice soared in a way no one expected. It was no longer a child singing. It was a soul speaking. When the last note faded, the silence lasted several seconds. No one moved. No one clapped. Then the entire theater exploded into applause. Simon Cowell stood up slowly. His eyes were wet. He tried to speak, but no words came out at first. He looked down, took a breath, and wiped his face. The audience gasped. Simon Cowell rarely cried. When he finally spoke, his voice shook. He said he had judged talent his entire life, but what he had just heard was beyond talent. It was truth. It was faith. It was courage. He admitted he did not understand the song at first, but he felt it in his heart. He said Amara reminded him that music does not need translation when it comes from the soul. The other judges echoed his words, praising her bravery for bringing something so personal to such a massive stage. One judge called it the most unexpected performance of the season. Another said it felt like the world had stopped for 3 minutes. Then came the moment no one expected. Simon Cowell reached for the golden buzzer. The crowd screamed as gold confetti rained down. Amara fell to her knees, overwhelmed, crying openly. She covered her face, unable to believe what was happening. Backstage, producers hugged her. Her mother watched from home on a small television, collapsing in tears as neighbors crowded around her. In that moment, a poor Filipino girl's voice had crossed oceans, cultures, and beliefs. But the story did not end there. After the audition aired, the performance went viral. Millions watched. Comments poured in from people of all backgrounds, religions, and countries. Some said the song reminded them of their own faith. Others said it brought them peace during dark times. Many said they had never cried so hard from a talent show audition. Amara received letters from around the world. People thanked her for reminding them of hope, of humility, of the power of belief. Yet fame was not easy. Critics emerged, questioning whether such a song belonged on a mainstream stage. Amara felt the pressure. Doubt crept in. One night, she called her mother crying, saying she felt unworthy. Her mother told her the same thing her grandmother once said. You sing because it is who you are, not because of who is watching. In the live shows, Amara continued to sing with honesty, though the pressure was immense. Some weeks she advanced. Other weeks she barely survived. But no matter what happened, she never lost the reason she began singing. In the finale, she did not win the competition. But when asked how she felt, Amara smiled and said she had already won. She had shared her faith. She had honored her family. She had shown the world that even the poorest voice can be the loudest when it speaks the truth. Years later, people still replay that audition. Simon Cowell still calls it one of the most emotional moments of his career. And in a small village by the sea, Amara's story is told as proof that miracles can begin anywhere.